We have to talk about Minneapolis and the terrible thing that unfolded this week. Renee Nicole Good, 37 years old, 3 children, 1 6 years old, is dead. And shouldn't be dead. And I did, if you watch my broadcast on BillO'Reilly.com, on all our platforms across the country and the world, I did extensive analysis, and it's well worth watching, that this happened because of bad decision making. All the way down the line, from Joe Biden's open border policy to the woman herself sitting in a car impeding a federal investigation. Bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And in your life, if you're going to make bad decisions, you can pay it. Now, that doesn't justify anything. I'm not happy. In fact, I'm offering Mass on Sunday for Miss Good and for the officer involved. I wish it never happened. Now, one of the reasons that this story is broken out is because there is now a rebellion on the part of certain states against the federal government. And the rebellion is very, very similar to what happened in the 1850s, when the South, sensing that slavery was going to be knocked out by the abolitionist movement and Abraham Lincoln, who was newly elected, but the South knew that James Buchanan, who was a president at the time, was a weak and feckless man. They knew that. They could control Buchanan, but they also knew there was some new president coming. So the South started to arm itself and started to defy the federal government. Buchanan was so cowardly, he didn't do anything about it. So, for example, that in some southern states, federal postmasters were beaten, facilities were set afire, federal munitions were looted, and Buchanan sat there in Washington and didn't do anything. While there was a state of rebellion building against the federal government in the South, which led to the Civil War, more than 1 million dead, the worst thing that's ever happened to the United States. So if you know your history, you know that's what happened. Now we have a rebellion again, and over the sanctuary city situation. So it's really sanctuary states. So it's California, it's Oregon, it's Washington State, it's Colorado, all right? It's Minnesota, it's Illinois, it's Massachusetts, it's New York, and there are many others. And it's a degree, a varying degree. But Minnesota is an open rebellion against the federal government. The governor, Walz, and the mayor of the largest city, Fry, Jacob Fry, are basically saying, blank you, federal government, we are not going to obey immigration law in Minnesota. Even though the law is on the books, 1952 law, very clear that you are not to come into the United States without proper documentation, we in Minnesota are not going to obey the law. And we don't care whether you like it or not. That is open rebellion. Not only are they not going to obey immigration law, they're going to protect in Minnesota. They protect illegal migrants who commit crimes. They do not turn them over to ICE, even when there is a court order to do so. That is rebellion, not dissent. So let's run a couple of soundbites from Walz, who ran for vice president with Kamala Harris. Go ahead.
This is what happens when your own federal government wages war against you. This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy, when you hear the Vice President of the United States talk about now white people won't have to apologize for being white.
That's a racist statement, in addition to being a rebellion. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And if you don't think that that stirs up, incites people, then you're out of your mind. Particularly weak-minded people, emotional people. All right, here's Mayor Fry. Go.
This happened because the way that ICE is conducting themselves is not constitutional. This happened because you got people that are coming into our city, tearing apart communities, really hurting a whole lot of small and local businesses, dragging pregnant women through the street, and then detaining people simply because they look Somali or look Latino.
So these are agitators now, the governor and the mayor. And again, they're entitled to their opinion under the First Amendment, but their authority is being used to undermine federal law, which supersedes state law. There's no doubt about it. You can't disagree with me. That's what's happening. So what do we do about it? Well, Congress isn't going to do anything about it because the Democratic Party largely sympathizes with the rebellion. Listen to Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
We should not have ICE agents patrolling our streets. They're not needed. They create chaos, and they even create deaths. The mayor of Minneapolis didn't want them. So many other cities didn't. This is sort of Trump strutting around. But they don't belong in our cities, plain and simple.
Okay, so the Democratic Party is not going to support any action against the states that are rebelling against federal law. Boy, talk about a conundrum. So now all the authority in this case lies in the Oval Office, with the commander-in-chief, with the president. And he has to make decisions on what to do, what to tamp this down. Now, I had a conversation with President Trump in his first term, and I said, listen, the Justice Department should be suing these states that won't obey federal law. It should be taking them in. Now, that did not happen. All right, I don't know why, but it has to happen now. Got to be lawsuits against the states that will not obey federal law, that are fomenting rebellion. All right? And finally, look, there are good people who want open borders. I mean, just because you're not agreeing with me about immigration law, doesn't mean you're a bad person. But if you're not going to respect laws that you don't like, then you're an anarchist. That's what you are. You're not loyal. You're not patriotic. You're an anarchist. If I like the law, I'll obey it. If I don't, I won't. No. You can't run a country of 350 million people like that. We are all Americans, but we all don't think alike. But we have an obligation to obey the law. If Congress wants to pass a new immigration law, good. We need it. That's how it's done. But you do not foment rebellion. Thanks for listening to this YouTube Extra.